Surely, in the hurried flow of life, when everyone desires to rise and assert themselves, the teaching of Lord Jesus flows like a cool, counter-current stream, gentle yet profound. Whoever wants to be the greatest among you must be your servant. Dear friend, have you ever paused to reflect on this invitation? God does not deny the legitimate human desire to be great, but he redefines greatness in a completely different way. Greatness in his eyes is not measured by power, status, or wealth as the world often pursues. It is measured by humility, by the ability to stoop down to serve, to lift others up. To be a servant does not mean devaluing oneself, but actively putting the interests of others first, using one's hands to lighten the burdens of our brothers and sisters, using one's heart to empathize and love unconditionally. It is the greatness of a heart that gives without expecting anything in return, of a candle that accepts melting away to illuminate its surroundings. That greatness is not loud or ostentatious, but silent like the love of God. It stems from inner strength, from a soul at peace because it knows its true worth lies in how it has lived for others. As Mother Teresa of Calcutta once contemplated, we cannot do great things, but we can do small things with great love. Indeed, true happiness and greatness do not lie in how many people serve us, but in how many people we have served with our hearts. That is the path Jesus walked, and it is the loving invitation he extends to each of us. Continuing in the warm and reflective spirit of the teaching about the servant, let us delve deeper into that path. The invitation of Jesus is not just a single teaching. It opens up a universe of wisdom. It is like a map leading to a treasure, where greatness and happiness are found in the most unexpected places. Before we begin, we kindly invite you to take a moment to subscribe to our channel to help spread this valuable content to your family and friends. We thank you, and now we invite you to listen. 1. True power is not about ruling, but about uplifting. The world sees power as the ability to make others submit, but Jesus taught that true power is using one's strength, position, and abilities to support others in their rise. It is not a throne to sit upon, but shoulders broad enough to carry burdens. On the dusty road to Capernaum, Jesus and his apostles met an old man struggling with a donkey cart full of pottery, one of its wheels broken. The apostles, eager to move on, were about to pass him by. Suddenly, Andrew spoke up. "Master, should we help him? He looks like he's having a hard time." Peter quickly said, "But Master, you are a respected teacher. How can you get your hands dirty with this? What will the people think?" Jesus smiled, said nothing, and approached the man. He bent down and helped him lift the cart. He said to his astonished apostles, "The strength I have is not to go faster than others, but to help those left behind to walk with us. This is true power, when you are strong enough to lift others up." 2. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Many people mistake humility for low self-esteem or denying one's own worth. On the contrary, humility is a form of freedom. It is when our minds are no longer obsessed with the question, "Who am I?" in the eyes of others, but shift to, "What are the needs of others?" During a meal, the apostles were again arguing about who was the greatest among them. The atmosphere became tense. Jesus quietly called a child playing outside and had him stand among them. "John, look at this child. Does he worry about whether others respect him?" John replied, "No, Lord. He is just playing happily." Jesus continued, "That is what humility is. It's not that you think you are inferior to your brothers, but that your heart is so full of peace that you no longer care to compare. When you think less about yourself, you will see the kingdom of heaven right before your eyes. 3. A person's worth is not in their status, but in their ability to serve. Society attaches labels to us: director, worker, rich, poor. Jesus tore all those labels away. In his eyes, your value is determined by the love you give through acts of service. Levi, the tax collector, invited Jesus to his house for a meal. Many Pharisees whispered, "Why does he eat with sinners?" One of the apostles, Simon the Zealot, also felt uncomfortable. He whispered to Jesus, "Master, sitting here diminishes your reputation. Levi is despised by the whole nation." Jesus looked at Levi, who was cheerfully hosting everyone, and then turned to Simon. "Simon, look, today I do not see a tax collector, but a heart opening up to serve. Where there is sincere service, there is value, and there I will also remain." 4. Leadership is going ahead to clear the path, and going behind to ensure no one is left behind. A worldly leader always wants to be at the center, leading the procession. A servant leader is flexible. They go ahead to face dangers, but are also ready to be the last in line to care for the weakest. When the group had to cross a treacherous mountain region, Thomas suggested, "Master, you should walk in our midst to be safest." Jesus shook his head. "When we go uphill, I will go first to scout the way for you. But when we go downhill, I will be the last." Matthew asked in surprise, "Why is that, Lord?" "Because when going downhill, the one at the back can see everyone. If someone slips or gets tired, that person will be the first to extend a hand. A good shepherd not only knows his sheep by name, but also knows to find the one that is lost." 5. The greatest influence comes from trust, not from commands. You can use power to force others to do your will, but that obedience is empty. But when you serve them with all your heart, you will earn their trust. From that trust, your influence will spread naturally and profoundly. A Samaritan woman at Jacob's well was surprised when Jesus asked her for a drink of water. "You are a Jew. Why do you ask for water from me, a Samaritan woman?" Jesus did not command or give a lofty lecture. He began with a humble gesture, breaking down all social barriers. He treated her as an equal. "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Because of that respect and service, she believed in him. She not only believed, but ran back to her village and brought the whole village to believe. His influence came not from a command, but from a humble request for water. 6. Greatness is found in small, anonymous actions. We often think we must do great things, known by many to be great. But the servant philosophy teaches that a gesture of tender care, a timely word of comfort, an unseen act of service, these are the bricks that build true greatness. After a day of teaching, when the crowds had left, Jesus saw a poor widow quietly gathering leftover crumbs of bread from the ground. The apostles paid her no mind. But Jesus approached her and asked, "Woman, what are you doing?" The woman, startled, replied, "Sir, I am just gathering a little so my children will have something to eat tonight." Jesus looked at his apostles and said, "You saw me multiply the loaves, but look at this woman. Her action is small, but her love for her children is not small at all. In the kingdom of heaven, actions done with such great love will be counted as the greatest." 7. Sacrifice is not a loss, but an investment in eternity. Serving always requires sacrifice, sacrificing time, energy, and even one's ego. On the surface, it seems like a loss. But through God's lens, it is how we sow seeds of love. What we give in humility will bear fruit in the kingdom of heaven. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus spoke of his impending passion. Peter, alarmed, tried to dissuade him. "God forbid, Lord, this shall never happen to you." Jesus replied sternly, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. My sacrifice is not the end, but the beginning of new life for many." 8. Listening is the first and most profound form of service. Before acting, a servant must know how to listen. Listening not just with the ears, but with the whole heart, to understand the needs, the pains, and the unspoken desires of others. It is the most precious gift you can give them. Bartimaeus, the blind man, sat by the roadside in Jericho and cried out, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet. They only saw a troublesome beggar. But Jesus stopped. He did not go straight to heal him, but asked, "What do you want me to do for you?" That question showed that he truly listened and respected Bartimaeus' desire. By asking, Jesus served his dignity before serving his eyes. 9. True joy comes not from being served, but in the act of serving. The world seeks joy in pleasure, in being catered to by others. But there is a sweet paradox. The deepest, most enduring joy is found when we forget ourselves to bring happiness to others. After a long, tiring day of healing and teaching, the apostles were exhausted. They saw Jesus, instead of resting, washing each of their feet. At first they were confused and ashamed, but as he dried their feet, a strange peace and joy filled the room. Jesus said, "Do you understand what I have done for you? The joy of the shepherd is not in sitting in a warm house, but in finding the lost sheep and carrying it on his shoulders. My joy is the same. It is complete when I am with and serving you." 10. The greatest legacy is not a monument, but the love sown in the hearts of others. When a leader dies, people may remember the structures they built. But when a servant leader passes, their legacy lives on in the lives they touched, in the love and kindness they spread. At the Last Supper, Jesus knew his hour was near. He did not talk about building a temple or erecting a statue to remember him. Instead, he broke the bread and shared the cup. "This is my body, which is given for you. This is my blood, which is poured out for the forgiveness of many. Do this in remembrance of me." Judas, not Iscariot, asked, "Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" Jesus replied, "My legacy is not of stone, but of love. It will not be hafted on walls, but written in your hearts. And when you love and serve one another, that is when you build the most living monument to me." 11. Serving is seeing the potential in others, even when they don't see it themselves. A true servant has special eyes. They don't just see a person as they are, with their faults and weaknesses, but also see the person they can become. Serving is watering the hidden seed of virtue, trusting in a person's goodness and helping them to believe in themselves. One evening, sitting by the fire, Jesus looked at Peter and said, "Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail." Peter declared, "Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and to death." Jesus looked at him with a mixture of compassion and trust. "Peter, I tell you, before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." Hearing this, Peter was stunned and heartbroken. But Jesus continued, his voice warming, "And when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers." He not only foresaw the fall, but also the rising and the future mission of Peter. He served him by believing in the man he would become. 12. Forgiveness is the highest form of service to the soul. Carrying the burden of guilt is like carrying a rock on your back. When you forgive someone, you are serving them by lifting that rock from their soul, giving them back their freedom and the chance to start over. Forgiveness is not erasing the past, but liberating the future. The scribes and Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery before Jesus. They said, "Teacher, according to the law of Moses, such a woman must be stoned. But what do you say?" They were trapping him. Jesus bent down and wrote on the ground with his finger. When they kept questioning him, he straightened up and said, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Hearing this, they went away one by one, beginning with the oldest. Only Jesus and the woman were left. He asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" She replied, "No one, sir." Jesus said, "Then neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." He served her with forgiveness, giving her a new life. 13. The truth may hurt, but a deceitful silence is crueler. Serving isn't always about soothing. Sometimes, true love demands the courage to speak the truth, to correct a brother who is on the wrong path. A sincere word of correction, though it may be painful at first, is an act of salvation, more valuable than 1,000 empty compliments. When Jesus foretold his passion, Peter took him aside and rebuked him. "Never, Lord, this shall never happen to you." He did it out of love, but it was a short-sighted love. Jesus turned and said to Peter decisively, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Those words were like a sword, but they cut out the tumor of misunderstanding and fear in Peter, a painful but necessary service for him to understand the true mission. 14. Simplicity is the strength of a servant. To serve, one does not need abundant resources or complex plans. The only thing needed is a willing heart. The greatness of an act of service lies not in its scale, but in the amount of love put into it. Jesus sat opposite the temple treasury, watching people put in their money. Many rich people put in large amounts. But then a poor widow came and put in only 2 small copper coins. Jesus called his disciples to him and said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on." He taught that true service is measured not by what we give, but by what we keep for ourselves. 15. Serving is about breaking down walls, not building them up. The world tends to divide. This nation against that nation, the righteous against the sinners, the clean against the unclean. The servant of God, however, is a bridge builder. They actively reach out to those rejected by society, giving them dignity and inviting them into the community. On his way, Jesus met 10 men with leprosy. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. But only one of them, a Samaritan, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" By healing both Jews and a Samaritan, and especially by highlighting the gratitude of the foreigner, he served by breaking down the walls of prejudice. 16. Hope is the most precious gift in the dark night of despair. When a person has lost everything, the only thing that can keep them standing is hope. Giving someone a ray of hope is not just a word of comfort. It is the act of lighting a fire in their soul, serving their very life. The disciples were in the middle of the lake, their boat battered by the waves because the wind was against it. Late at night, they saw Jesus approaching, walking on the water. They were terrified, crying out, "It's a ghost!" Immediately Jesus spoke to them. "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." His voice in the midst of the storm not only dispelled their fear, but also planted a firm hope in their hearts. Serving in that situation was not about instantly calming the storm, but about bringing a peaceful presence into the heart of the storm. 17. A servant does not create dependence, but empowers free people. The goal of help is not to make others forever dependent on you. True service is giving others the tools, knowledge, and confidence to stand on their own 2 feet. It is an act of liberation, not bondage. Some men brought to Jesus a paralyzed man lying on a mat. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the man, "Take heart, son. Your sins are forgiven." Then, to prove his authority, he continued, "Get up, take your mat, and go home." The man got up and went home. He not only healed him, but also commanded him to take your mat. It was a command of freedom, giving him back control over his life and his own space. 18. A silent presence is sometimes more valuable than 1,000 words. Some pains are too great for any words of comfort to reach. In those moments, the noblest act of service is simply to be there. Your presence, your silent empathy, is a powerful message that you are not alone. When Lazarus died, Jesus came to the village of Bethany. When he saw Mary and the Jews who had come along with her weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. He asked, "Where have you laid him?" Then Jesus wept. He wept with them. Before performing the greatest miracle of raising Lazarus, he performed an incredibly human act of service, sharing their pain with his presence and sincere tears. 19. Gratitude is the fuel for the spirit of service. A servant not only gives but also knows how to receive and appreciate. A heart full of gratitude will never run out of energy to love. Gratitude turns what we have into enough, and turns service from a duty into a joy. After healing the 10 lepers, only the one Samaritan returned to give thanks. Jesus used that opportunity to teach a lesson. He looked not only at his own act of healing, but also at the response of the one who was healed. He said to the man, "Rise and go, your faith has made you well." He highlighted gratitude, reminding us that the circle of service is only complete when there is a response of thankfulness, no matter how small. 20. Lead by empowering, not by hoarding power. A worldly leader often concentrates power in their own hands. A servant leader seeks to distribute power. They trust, train, and give others the opportunity to lead, because they know that a strong community is one where many people share the responsibility. After training his disciples, Jesus did not keep them by his side forever. He sent them out 2 by 2, giving them authority over impure spirits. He said, "Freely you have received, freely give." He did not do everything himself, but entrusted the mission to his disciples. That is the ultimate act of service from a teacher, turning his students into people capable of doing the things he has done. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 21. Patience is a silent act of service. Serving is not always an immediate action. Sometimes it is waiting, giving others the space and time to grow, to find their own way. The servant's patience is an expression of faith and love, trusting that the seed sown will one day sprout. Jesus' own family thought he was out of his mind. The people of his hometown, Nazareth, rejected him. But he did not get angry or give up on them. When James and John wanted to call fire down from heaven to destroy a Samaritan village that did not welcome them, Jesus rebuked them. He said, "The Son of Man did not come to destroy lives, but to save them." His patience in the face of human stubbornness and misunderstanding was a persistent service, waiting for the moment their hearts would open. 22. Serving is turning pain into wisdom. Everyone experiences suffering. A servant not only seeks to soothe the pain of others, but also helps them find meaning and lessons in those very painful experiences. They help turn scars into sources of strength and empathy. After Jesus was resurrected, he appeared to 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. They were sad and disappointed about his death. Jesus, at first not letting them recognize him, walked along with them. He asked about their sadness, and when they recounted the events, he did not immediately reveal himself. Instead, he explained the scriptures, showing them that the Christ had to suffer these things and then enter his glory. He served them by helping them redefine their pain, turning the event of the cross from a tragedy into a necessary part of the plan of salvation. 23. The joy of others is the servant's reward. The servant does not seek glory for themselves. Their measure of success is the smile, the peace, the progress of those they help. Their joy is multiplied when they see others happy. John the Baptist was a great preacher with many disciples, but when Jesus appeared, people began to follow him. John's disciples came to complain, "Rabbi, that man who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, the one you testified about, well, he is baptizing, and everyone is going to him." John replied with one of the most humble statements, "He must become greater. I must become less." He compared himself to the friend of the bridegroom, who rejoices just to hear the bridegroom's voice. His joy was to see Jesus succeed. That is the pinnacle of the spirit of service. 24. Serving requires the discernment to know what to give. Helping does not mean fulfilling every request. Sometimes giving people what they want can harm them. A wise servant uses discernment to recognize the real need behind the surface desires and gives what is truly good for them, even if it is not what they asked for. When they brought a paralyzed man to him, they expected a physical healing. But the first thing Jesus said was, "Your sins are forgiven." He saw a deeper need, a paralysis of the soul that needed to be healed first. He served not just the temporary, but the eternal. He gave the gift of forgiveness before giving the ability to walk. 25. A quiet heart is the source of all acts of service. No one can give what they do not have. A servant cannot bring peace to others if their own soul is full of storms. Therefore, solitude, prayer, and connecting with the divine source are not selfish, but prerequisites for serving effectively and sustainably. The Gospels frequently record that after stressful days of work, very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place, where he prayed. The disciples found him and said, "Everyone is looking for you." But Jesus knew that in order to give, he needed to be filled. His time alone with the Father was not an escape from responsibility, but a time to recharge with love, to continue serving. 26. Serving is an invitation, not an imposition. A true servant never forces their help on others. They respect the freedom of each individual. They offer an invitation, an outstretched hand, and patiently wait for the other person to willingly accept it. When he met the rich young man, Jesus looked at him with love and extended a radical invitation. "You still lack one thing. Go, sell everything you have and give to the poor. Then come, follow me." He did not force him. When the young man went away sad, he let him go. His service respected the dignity and self-determination of people, even when it meant being rejected. 27. Authenticity is the soul of service. An act of service is valuable only when it comes from a sincere heart. People can feel the difference between a gesture of duty and an act born of love. A servant does not wear a mask. They live and give from their true selves. Jesus strongly condemned the hypocritical Pharisees and scribes. Everything they do is done for people to see. They love the place of honor at banquets and the greetings in the marketplaces. He pointed out that their seemingly virtuous actions were actually to serve their own egos. He contrasted this with silent service, like praying in one's room or giving without letting the left hand know what the right hand is doing. Authenticity is the measure of value. 28. Serving is building a community, not an army. A worldly leader builds an army that obeys commands. A servant leader builds a family, a community where people are connected by love and mutual support. They care not only about the relationship between themselves and each individual, but also foster the relationships between individuals. At the Last Supper, after washing the disciples' feet, Jesus gave a new commandment: love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. His command was not serve me, but serve one another. The legacy he left was not a hierarchical system, but a network of mutual love, where each person is a servant to their brother. 29. Perseverance is the final test of a servant. Anyone can serve when they are inspired, but only a true servant can persevere in serving when faced with fatigue, ingratitude, and opposition. Persistence turns a good deed into a good life. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus' soul was overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. He prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Even in his deepest agony, when his closest disciples were asleep, he persisted in his mission of service. His perseverance in that dark night was the pinnacle of obedient love, an act of service for all humanity. 30. Service is a two-way street. In giving, we receive. The final paradox of the servant philosophy is this: when we stoop to lift others, we ourselves are lifted. When we ease the sorrow of others, our own souls are filled with peace. When we give without counting the cost, we receive priceless gifts that cannot be bought. When the woman who had been subject to bleeding, in her desperation, pushed through the crowd and touched the edge of Jesus' cloak, she was instantly healed. Jesus felt power go out from him. He asked, "Who touched my clothes?" It is a beautiful image. His healing power, service, flowed out, and at the same time, the woman's faith, reception, touched him. In that moment of service, there was a sacred exchange. The giver felt, and the receiver was healed. Service is not a one-way street, but a dance of grace. 31. Serving is daring to be vulnerable. To truly connect with the pain of others, a servant must be willing to open their heart, accepting the possibility of being hurt. Revealed weakness is not a flaw, but a doorway through which love and empathy can pass, creating a deep bond between people. As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, Jesus wept over it. The disciples were surprised to see their powerful master shed tears so openly. Matthew whispered to John, "Why is he crying? He could conquer the whole world." Jesus heard him, turned, his eyes still wet with tears. "I do not cry for my own weakness, but for the love I have for this place. A heart that does not know how to break for love is a heart that has never truly loved. To heal a wound, sometimes you must let it make you bleed." 32. Serving is paying attention to the invisible people. Society often focuses on those who are prominent, powerful, or loud. The servant has the ability to see and care for those who are overlooked, those on the margins of society, those who think they are not worthy of attention. When Jesus entered Jericho, a man named Zacchaeus, a chief tax collector and a wealthy man, wanted to see who he was, but could not because he was short and the crowd was large. So he climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." The whole crowd was stunned. Jesus had not just seen a man in a tree. He had seen a longing soul hidden by status and self-consciousness. He served him by calling him by name and giving him dignity. 33. Serving sometimes means breaking unjust rules. Love for humanity is the supreme law. When rules, whether social or religious, become a burden and hinder compassion, the courageous servant will prioritize people over rules. They do not break rules to rebel, but to liberate. On a Sabbath, Jesus went into the synagogue and saw a man with a shriveled hand. The Pharisees were watching him to see if he would heal the man on the Sabbath, so they could accuse him. Jesus knew their thoughts and said to the man, "Get up and stand in the middle." Then he asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?" They remained silent. He looked around at them in anger, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. He served humanity by placing mercy above a rigidly interpreted law. 34. Asking the right question is an act of service to the intellect. Instead of always providing answers, a wise servant often asks profound questions. A good question can open up a space for others to reflect, to discover truth for themselves, and to find their own path. It is a way of serving by empowering the intellect. On the road, Jesus asked his disciples, "Who do people say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets." After listening, he asked a more direct question, a question that forced them to confront their own hearts. "But what about you? Who do you say I am?" That question did not seek information, but invited a confession. Peter answered, "You are the Christ." By asking, Jesus served their faith, helping it take shape through words. 35. Hospitality is the gateway to service. Opening one's home to welcome someone, especially a stranger, is a concrete and profound act of service. Hospitality turns a private space into a safe haven, a place where love can be shared through a meal, a place to rest. When Jesus came to the home of two sisters, Martha and Mary, Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Mary, however, sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. Martha, frustrated, came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." Jesus answered, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." He did not downplay Martha's service, but he taught that sometimes the highest form of hospitality is listening, offering one's full attention. 36. Serving is being a peacemaker. The world is full of conflict and division. The servant is one who does not add fuel to the fire, but seeks to bring water to extinguish it. They actively stand between opposing sides, seeking understanding and striving to mend broken relationships. On the mountain, as he taught the crowds, one of the first beatitudes Jesus proclaimed was, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." He did not say, "Blessed are those who love peace," but peacemakers, which requires active engagement. Later, when the disciples argued about who was the greatest, he did not take sides, but taught them a lesson in humility. He served his fledgling community by constantly extinguishing the embers of conflict and calling them to unity. 37. Allowing for rest is also an act of service. In a world that constantly demands productivity, recognizing human limits and creating conditions for rest is an essential act of service. It serves physical and mental health, acknowledging that humans are not machines. After the apostles returned from their mission trip, they reported to Jesus all they had done and taught. There were so many people coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat. Seeing his disciples were tired, Jesus said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." He did not push them to work more. He served them by being attentive to their need for rest, teaching them that silence and restoration are also important parts of a life of service. 38. Protecting the weak is the servant's responsibility. The servant's strength is not used for intimidation, but to create a shield to protect the most vulnerable in society. They raise their voices for the voiceless and use their bodies to defend those who cannot defend themselves. People were bringing little children to Jesus for him to place his hands on them. When the disciples saw this, they rebuked them. But Jesus was indignant and said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these." Then he took the children in his arms, placed his hands on them, and blessed them. In a society that considered children to have no status, his action was a powerful defense. He served them by affirming their value and protecting them from the harshness of adults. 39. Serving with a generous spirit. Service is not limited to material things. Sometimes a sincere compliment, a timely recognition. A word of encouragement is more valuable than gold or silver. The servant has a generous spirit. They are not stingy with words of affirmation and building others up. A centurion in Capernaum came to Jesus, asking him to heal his servant. When Jesus was about to go to his house, the centurion said, "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word, and my servant will be healed." When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those following him, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith." He not only healed the servant, but also publicly praised the faith of a Gentile. He served him with recognition and encouragement. 40. Speaking truth to power is an act of service to justice. Serving is not always gentle. Sometimes it requires the courage to confront injustice at its source. The servant does not remain silent in the face of the wrongdoing of the powerful, but speaks the voice of truth, even knowing they will be in danger. When Jesus entered the temple courts, he saw people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables, saying, "Stop turning my Father's house into a market." It was not an act of uncontrolled anger, but a deliberate act of service, aimed at purifying and restoring sanctity, challenging a system that had become greedy and corrupt. 41. Not retaliating is a way to serve peace. When harmed, the natural human instinct is to seek revenge. The servant chooses a different, more difficult path, breaking the cycle of violence with forgiveness and non-retaliation. This action is not weakness, but extraordinary strength aimed at serving a future of reconciliation. In the Garden of Gethsemane, when the crowd came to arrest Jesus, Peter drew his sword and struck the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. Jesus immediately stopped him. "Put your sword back in its place. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Then he touched the servant's ear and healed him. In the midst of betrayal and facing death, his final act of service before his arrest was to heal his enemy, teaching an eternal lesson of forgiveness. 42. Serving is looking at the heart, not the outward action. People often judge each other by what they do or don't do. The servant has a deeper insight. They try to look at the intention, the struggle, and the state of the heart behind every action. Jesus told a parable of two sons. The father went to the first and said, "Son, go and work today in the vineyard." He answered, "I will, sir." But he did not go. The father went to the second and said the same. He answered, "I will not." But later he changed his mind and went. Jesus asked, which of the two did what his father wanted? They replied, "The second." He taught that true service lies in the conversion of the heart that leads to action, not in empty promises. 43. Serving is sharing wisdom in a simple way. Lofty knowledge becomes useless if no one can understand it. An important form of service is the ability to interpret complex truths into simple, relatable language so that everyone, from scholars to common people, can receive and apply them to their lives. The disciples often asked Jesus complex theological questions. Once they asked about the kingdom of heaven. Instead of giving a philosophical lecture, he replied, "The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his field. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into about 60 pounds of flour until it worked all through the dough." By using everyday images like a mustard seed, yeast, a treasure, a pearl. Jesus served the understanding of the people, making sublime mysteries visible and relatable. 44. Serving is sowing seeds without being attached to the results. The servant is called to be faithful in action, not necessarily successful by the world's standards. Their job is to sow seeds of love, kindness, and truth. How those seeds sprout and grow is sometimes beyond their control. Jesus told the parable of the sower. A farmer went out to sow his seed. As he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, some on rocky places, some among thorns, and some on good soil. Not all the seeds bore fruit. The story does not focus on the productivity of the harvest, but on the action of the sower. He just kept sowing. The servant is the same. They faithfully do their part and entrust the results to God. 45. Serving is celebrating small victories. On a long journey, discouragement is inevitable. The servant leader knows that recognizing and celebrating progress, no matter how small, will provide motivation and joy for the entire community. It is a way of serving through encouragement and hope. When the 72 returned from their mission, they were joyful and said, "Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name." Instead of downplaying their success, Jesus shared in their joy. At that time, Jesus, full of joy through the Holy Spirit, said, "I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth." He celebrated with them, affirmed their work, and turned their small victory into a moment of praise and divine connection. 46. Serving by honoring the dignity of labor. In God's eyes, no work is menial when it is done honestly and with a spirit of service. From the carpenter, the fisherman, to the farmer, can find sanctity and value in their labor. Jesus, known as the carpenter's son, did not hesitate to use images from the world of manual labor to describe the highest truths. He spoke of the shepherd searching for the lost sheep, the woman sweeping her house to find a lost coin, the father working hard in the fields. By doing so, he served the dignity of ordinary laborers, showing them that their daily work has a sacred meaning and beauty. 47. Serving is having the courage to stay when everyone else leaves. Loyalty is tested not in good times, but in crisis. When the crowd turns away, when the road becomes difficult, the true servant is the one who chooses to stay, not out of blindness, but out of a deep love and commitment. After his discourse on the bread of life, many of Jesus' disciples said, "This is a hard teaching. Who can accept it?" From this time, many of his disciples turned back and no longer followed him. Jesus turned to the 12 and asked, "You do not want to leave too, do you?" It was a vulnerable question. Simon Peter answered for the group, "Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life." Their staying at that moment was the greatest act of service they could offer their master. 48. Serving is freeing others from their past. Many people are shackled by their past mistakes. The servant brings a message of liberation. You are not the sum of your failures. You always have a chance to start again. They help others look to the future with hope instead of being haunted by the past. When Mary Magdalene met Jesus, she was known as a sinful woman. But he did not treat her according to that reputation. He freed her from 7 demons. From then on, she became one of the most faithful disciples who stood at the foot of the cross and was the first to announce the news of the resurrection. Jesus served her by giving her a new identity, a future not defined by the past. 49. Serving is a creative act. Love is never limited by pre-existing formulas. The servant always finds new and creative ways to meet the needs of others. They have the ability to see an old situation with new eyes and find an unexpected solution. When they could not get a paralyzed man to Jesus because of the crowd, they performed an extraordinary creative act. They made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it, and then lowered the mat the man was lying on. They did not give up. Jesus, seeing their faith and creativity, not only healed the man, but also affirmed their bold action. Serving sometimes requires us to dare to remove the roof. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 50. Love is the beginning, the path, and the destination of all service. In the end, all 49 philosophies above can be summed up in a single word: love. Love is the motivation that makes one stoop down. Love is the wisdom that shows them how to serve, and love is the atmosphere that service creates. Every action, whether small or large, is just a resounding gong if it lacks love. At the Last Supper, knowing he was about to depart, Jesus did not leave a complex set of laws or an abstract philosophical system. He left a simple and living testament. A new command I give you: love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. The entire philosophy of the servant is born from this command and ultimately returns to it. To serve is just another way of writing the word love. 51. Service begins with self-awareness. A servant cannot give effectively if they do not know themselves. They must be aware of their strengths to utilize, and also their limitations, prejudices, and wounds, so as not to inadvertently harm others. Humble self-awareness is the foundation for pure and wise service. When messengers from Jerusalem came to ask John the Baptist, "Who are you?" he did not claim to be the Christ, nor Elijah, nor the prophet. He answered clearly, "I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, 'Make straight the way for the Lord.'" Then he added humbly, "Whose sandals I am not worthy to untie." John served so powerfully precisely because he knew his role. He was not the light, but only the witness to the light. That self-awareness freed him from his ego to fully accomplish his mission. 52. Service requires integrity. The inner person and the outer action are one. Trust is the most precious currency of a servant, and it is minted with integrity. Words and deeds must go together. Private life must be in harmony with the public image. If there is a crack between the two, the entire work of service is at risk of collapse. Jesus told the crowds about the scribes and Pharisees, "So you must be careful to do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach." He pointed out their lack of integrity. They tie up heavy loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. In contrast, Jesus lived what he preached. He preached about love, and he loved to the end. He preached about forgiveness, and he forgave on the cross. His absolute integrity was his greatest persuasive power. 53. Serving is letting go of control. The servant understands that they are not the Savior. They do their best, but they entrust the outcome to a greater power. They are not obsessed with controlling every detail, every result. This letting go brings them peace and frees them from the burden of pride. One afternoon, when Jesus and his disciples were on a boat crossing the lake, a furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. But Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples, terrified, woke him up. "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" His sleep was not carelessness, but an expression of absolute trust. He served them by showing them that even in the midst of a storm, peace can be found when one knows how to let go of control and trust in the Father. 54. Serving is an act of inner freedom. A true servant does not act out of a desire for praise or fear of criticism. Their motivation comes from within, from an inner compass that always points towards love and truth. This freedom allows them to approach those rejected by society, to speak difficult words, and to do things no one else dares to do. When Jesus was having dinner at a Pharisee's house, a woman in that town who lived a sinful life brought an alabaster jar of perfume, stood behind him at his feet weeping, and began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. The Pharisee thought to himself, "If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is." Jesus, with inner freedom, did not care about the whispers. He defended the woman and used her action to teach a lesson about love and gratitude. 55. Service requires the wisdom of discernment. Not every cry for help comes from a genuine need. A servant must have the clarity to discern what is a real need that should be met and what is curiosity, selfish demand, or a subtle temptation. Discernment helps them use their time and energy most effectively. When the Pharisees and scribes came to ask Jesus for a sign from heaven to test him, he did not meet their demand. He sighed deeply and said, "Why does this generation ask for a sign? Truly I tell you, no sign will be given to it." He knew they were not asking out of faith, but out of a hardened heart. He served the truth by refusing to participate in a futile game, teaching that service is not about performing tricks to satisfy curiosity. 56. Serving is building bridges, not islands. The servant is a connector. They seek to bring people and communities that are divided closer together. They cross barriers of race, religion, culture, and social status to create a space for encounter and understanding. On his way from Judea to Galilee, Philip met an Ethiopian eunuch, an important official, sitting in his chariot reading the book of the prophet Isaiah. The Spirit told Philip to go near. He asked, "Do you understand what you are reading?" The official replied, "How can I, unless someone explains it to me?" Philip then got into the chariot, sat with him, and began to explain about Jesus. Philip's action built a bridge between Judaism and the Gentiles, between Asia and Africa, between an ordinary person and a powerful official. That is serving by extending the arms of the community. 57. Serving is investing in the next generation. The servant leader has a long-term vision. They not only solve immediate problems, but also dedicate time and effort to train, guide, and empower those who will continue the work. Their greatest legacy is the people they have trained. Jesus spent most of his time not with the crowds, but with the 12. He took them with him, taught them, corrected them, and shared his most intimate thoughts with them. He gave special attention to Peter, James, and John, taking them up the mountain of transfiguration and into the Garden of Gethsemane. It was a deliberate investment. He was serving the future of the church by forging its first pillars. 58. Serving by celebrating the joy of others. In a world full of competition and jealousy, sincerely rejoicing in the joy of others is a rare and noble act of service. The servant does not see the success of others as a threat, but as a reason to celebrate, turning personal joy into the shared joy of the community. At the wedding at Cana, when the wine ran out, Mary went to Jesus. Although his hour had not yet come, he performed his first miracle, turning water into fine wine. He did not do it to show off his power, but to save a wedding from embarrassment and to make the joy of the newlyweds complete. He served by contributing to the happiness and celebration of others. 59. Serving is persevering through misunderstanding. Those who do good often cannot avoid being misunderstood, even having their motives misrepresented. The true servant does not let slander discourage them. They find strength not from the approval of the world, but from their conviction in the truth and rightness of what they are doing. When Jesus healed a man who was mute and demon-possessed, some of the Pharisees said, "It is by Beelzebul, the prince of demons, that he drives out demons." It was the most venomous slander, turning an act of love into the work of the devil. Instead of giving up, Jesus calmly used logic to refute the slander and continued his healing work. He taught that the servant's perseverance is tested most severely when kindness is questioned. 60. Serving is blessing those who curse you. This is the pinnacle of the servant philosophy, a seemingly superhuman challenge. It is the ability not only to forgive, but to actively wish well for those who harm you. This action breaks all logic of revenge and opens up a new space of grace. On the mountain, Jesus gave one of his most revolutionary teachings. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This was not an empty theory. On the cross, amidst extreme pain and ridicule, he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." He served those who crucified him with a prayer of forgiveness, turning an instrument of torture into a pulpit for boundless love. 61. Serving is being flexible and adaptable. Everyone's needs are different. A rigid servant applying one formula to every situation will not be effective. A wise and loving servant knows how to adjust their methods to suit the circumstances and personality of the person they are helping. Jesus healed many people, but his methods were never cookie-cutter. With the leper, he reached out his hand and touched him, an extraordinary act that broke a taboo. With the centurion's servant, he only needed to say the word from a distance. With the blind man at Bethsaida, he took him out of the village, spat on his eyes, and put his hands on him. With the man born blind, he mixed some mud and applied it to his eyes. This flexibility shows that he served each specific person, not a general illness. 62. Serving is a form of worship. Every act of service, no matter how small, when done with a pure heart and for the sake of love, becomes a prayer offered to God. A cup of cold water given to another in the name of the Lord is as valuable as an offering in the temple. In the parable of the final judgment, Jesus describes the king saying to the righteous, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." The righteous, surprised, ask, "Lord, when did we see you?" And the king replies, "Truly I tell you, Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Serving others is the most concrete and authentic way to worship God. 63. Serving is seeing God in others. The deepest foundation of all service is the ability to recognize the divine image in every human being, no matter how obscured that image may be, by sin, sickness, or poverty. When we see the spark of God in our brother, serving is no longer a burden, but an honor. At the Last Supper, Jesus did something unimaginable. He got up, tied a towel around his waist, and began to wash his disciples' feet. He washed the feet of Peter, who was about to deny him. And surely he also bent down and washed the feet of Judas, whom he knew would betray him just hours later. By serving his betrayer, Jesus taught the ultimate lesson. One must see the divine dignity of a person, even when they are in the deepest darkness. 64. Serving is an invitation, not a debt. When a servant helps someone, they do not create an obligation to be repaid. They do not say, "Now you owe me." Instead, their action is a silent invitation, encouraging the one who was helped to pass that kindness on to others, becoming a link in the chain of love. After telling the parable of the Good Samaritan, who bandaged the wounds and cared for a man beaten by robbers, Jesus asked the expert in the law, "Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The man replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus did not say, "Go find and repay that Samaritan." He said, "Go and do likewise." The invitation is to become the next servant. 65. Serving is a journey into unity. The ultimate purpose of service is not just to solve a problem, but to build communion. When we serve and are served, the walls of the ego, of difference, of loneliness gradually crumble, leaving a space of unity where everyone recognizes themselves as members of the same human family. In his final prayer before his passion, Jesus did not pray for his disciples' wealth or power. He prayed for their unity. "Father, that all of them may be one, Father. Just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me." The mutual service he taught is the path to achieving that unity. Service is the glue that binds souls together and to God. 66. Serving is saying yes to life. Every act of service, however small, is an affirmation against indifference, selfishness, and death. To feed a hungry person is to say yes to their life. To comfort a grieving person is to say yes to their emotions. To forgive a wrongdoer is to say yes to their capacity for renewal. Service is a rebellion of love against destruction. When Jesus stood before Lazarus's tomb, he was moved and wept. But then he called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The dead man came out. That act was the ultimate service, a powerful intervention to pull life from the clutches of death. Every act of our service in some way is an echo of that call, pulling our brothers and sisters out of the tombs of poverty, loneliness, and despair. 67. Serving is believing in transformation. The servant not only sees people as they are, but also believes in the people they can become. They believe that no heart is too hardened, that it cannot be softened by love, no life too lost that it cannot find its way back. This belief is the driving force of their persistence. When Zacchaeus, the tax collector hated by the whole city, climbed a tree to see Jesus, he called him down and went to his house. That unconditional acceptance completely transformed Zacchaeus' heart. He stood up and said, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus did not demand he do that. His act of service sparked the transformation from within. 68. Serving is cherishing the ordinary. The servant does not wait for extraordinary opportunities to act. They find holiness and opportunities to serve in the most ordinary moments. A conversation, a shared meal, a daily task. They turn the ordinary into extraordinary with the love they put into it. The journey of Jesus was full of simple moments of service. He sat and talked with the woman at the well. He ate with sinners. He let children bother him. He attended a wedding. He taught that the kingdom of heaven is not only in lofty places, but is also present in the simplest acts of love in daily life. 69. Serving is bringing order to chaos. The world is often chaotic, full of worries, fears, and conflicts. The servant enters that chaos and brings a principle of divine order, the order of love, of peace, of hope. They do not solve every problem, but their presence provides a firm anchor. When the storm arose on the Sea of Galilee, the disciples panicked in the chaos of the wind and waves. The boat, a symbol of their lives, was about to sink. Jesus, who was sleeping, woke up. He did not just rebuke the storm. He said to it, "Quiet, be still." Immediately, the sea became completely calm. He served them by bringing order and peace to the chaos, both outside and inside their souls. 70. Serving is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. The final and most beautiful paradox of the servant philosophy is this: its purpose is to give, but its result is to receive. When we live for others, our own lives become more meaningful, deeper, and more joyful. By forgetting ourselves, we find the best version of ourselves. Jesus said, "Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life." And he also said, "Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap." This is not a commercial exchange, but a sacred law. Happiness is not a destination we pursue, but a natural byproduct of a life lived in service. 71. Serving is finding strength in weakness. The world teaches us to hide our weaknesses. The servant philosophy teaches that when we dare to admit our limitations and our dependence on a greater power, that is when we are strongest. The servant's strength comes not from self-sufficiency, but from a humble heart that knows it is just an instrument. Once the apostle Bartholomew, also called Nathanael, said to Jesus in private, "Master, sometimes I feel too small and incompetent for this great work. I am just a fisherman. What can I do?" Jesus placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Nathanael, a mighty river is not strong because of its own water, but because it knows how to lower itself so that all other streams can flow into it. When you feel weak, that is when you are most open for my Father's strength to flow through you. Do not fear your weakness. Fear the strength you think is your own." 72. Serving is leading from below. The worldly leader stands on a high platform to give orders. The servant leader steps down to walk alongside. They lead not by the authority of their position, but by the influence of their closeness and understanding. They are a part of the community they serve, not above it. When Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount, he did not stand on a high, remote peak, separate from the people. The Gospel records that seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain. And he sat down, and his disciples came to him. He sat down at their level, like an elder brother in a family. A Roman soldier watching from a distance said to the person next to him, "How strange. Our generals stand up high so their shouts can carry far. This man sits down, so his voice goes straight to the heart." 73. Serving is finding freedom in obedience. The world thinks freedom is doing whatever one wants. The servant philosophy reveals a deeper truth. True freedom is when our will is joyfully aligned with a purpose higher than ourselves. Obedience out of love is not a loss of freedom, but the discovery of freedom at its highest level. In the Garden of Gethsemane, facing extreme suffering, Jesus prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me." That is the voice of natural will, of very human fear. But then he continued, "Yet not my will, but yours be done." In that moment, he did not lose his freedom. On the contrary, he achieved ultimate freedom. Freedom from his own fear. Freedom to fulfill his mission of love. That obedience was a free and active choice. 74. Serving with a teachable spirit. No one has all the answers. The wise servant is one who always maintains a humble spirit, ready to learn from everyone, every situation, and even willing to change their views when faced with a new truth. They are lifelong learners on the journey of love. A Canaanite woman came, pleading with Jesus to heal her demon-possessed daughter. At first, he was silent, and then said, "He was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." But the woman was not discouraged. She replied with a humble and intelligent answer, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Jesus was astonished by her answer. He was not offended, but publicly acknowledged her faith and wisdom. "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." He showed that even the greatest teacher has a spirit willing to listen and be persuaded by sincere faith. 75. Serving with the courage to live small. In a world that idolizes fame and scale, choosing to live a life of quiet service, focusing on the people right in front of you, requires a special kind of courage. It is the courage to believe that the value of a life is not measured by the number of followers, but by the depth of the love given. Jesus lived for 30 years in obscurity in the unknown village of Nazareth. Even during his 3 years of public ministry, he spent most of his time in the remote countryside of Galilee. Once his brothers said to him, "Leave here and go to Judea, so that your disciples there may see the works you do." No one who wants to become a public figure acts in secret. But Jesus knew that the kingdom of heaven is built not by grand events, but by personal encounters, by lives quietly transformed. 76. Serving creates ripple effects. An act of service is never an isolated event. It is like a pebble thrown into a still lake, creating ripples that spread far and wide, touching lives that the original sower may never see or know. After Jesus healed the demon-possessed man in the region of the Gerasenes, the man begged to go with him, but Jesus did not let him. He told him, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." The man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. One act of healing for one person became the seed of the gospel for an entire region. 77. Service is the most powerful testimony. People can argue about dogma, they can refute arguments, but they cannot deny the power of a life lived for others. A life of service is a sermon without words, a testimony whose persuasive power transcends all language and cultural barriers. When Jesus breathed his last on the cross, after having forgiven his enemies and entrusted everything to the Father, the Roman centurion standing there in front of him, who had witnessed everything, was forced to exclaim, "Surely this man was the Son of God." He was not convinced by a dazzling miracle, but by the way Jesus lived and died in ultimate service and love. 78. Serving is planting trees for the next generation. The servant has the vision of a farmer, not a merchant. They are willing to plant and cultivate seeds from which they themselves may never enjoy the sweet fruit. They work not just for the present, but for a future they believe will be better. Jesus spent his entire time teaching his disciples, knowing that many things he said they would only truly understand after he was gone and after the Holy Spirit came. He told them, "I have much more to say to you, more than you can now bear." He was planting trees whose shade would protect the church for centuries to come. He served the future with patience in the present. 79. Service is a universal language. In a world divided by hundreds of languages and thousands of cultures, an act of kindness is something everyone can understand. A smile, a helping hand, a shared meal. These are words in a common human language, the language of love. Once Jesus' disciples came to a village and saw a woman crying because her donkey had fallen into a muddy pit. They did not know the local language to comfort her. But James and John said nothing. They just rolled up their sleeves and, along with other villagers, pulled the donkey out. When the donkey was safe, the woman said nothing, just clasped her hands and bowed to them with tearful, grateful eyes. They had a complete conversation without a single word. Before we continue with today's journey of discovery, we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a moment to leave a comment and share your feelings. If you found this content valuable, please don't forget to hit the share button to spread these positive vibes to your friends and family. And now, let's get back to the program. 80. Service is a quiet revolution. The world is often changed by loud revolutions, battles, and political upheavals. But there is another revolution, quieter, but more powerful, carried out by millions of small, daily acts of service. It does not change governments. It changes human hearts. And from there, it changes the world from the inside out. Jesus told a parable about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into about 60 pounds of flour until it worked all through the dough. Yeast works silently, invisibly. You don't see it working, but in the end, it transforms the whole batch of dough. A life of service is like that yeast. It quietly spreads love and kindness, gradually leavening the community and the world. 81. Serving is keeping memory alive. Every act of service not only looks to the future, but is also a way to honor the past. When we serve, we are continuing the legacy of those who served before us, keeping the flame they lit from ever being extinguished. At the Last Supper, when he instituted the Eucharist, Jesus took bread, gave thanks and broke it, and said, "Do this in remembrance of me." His supreme act of service, the offering of himself, is linked to the command to remember. The service of the disciples later was not just a new task, but an act of loving remembrance, making the presence of their Master alive through all ages. 82. Serving by trusting others. One of the most profound ways to serve is to place trust in a person, give them responsibility, and believe they are capable of fulfilling it. That trust has the power to unleash potential and bring out the best in them. After his resurrection, Jesus met Peter by the Sea of Tiberias. He did not bring up Peter's 3 denials. Instead, he asked a different question 3 times. "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" After each of Peter's affirmations, Jesus gave him a mission: feed my lambs, take care of my sheep. He served Peter's healing by placing his complete trust in him, turning the denier into the shepherd of the church. 83. Serving is healing the wounds of the past. Many individuals and communities are wounded by past injustices. Serving is not just helping in the present. It can also be an act of restorative justice, acknowledging past wrongs and contributing to the healing of the wounds they caused. Zacchaeus' promise after meeting Jesus is a perfect model of restorative service. He not only decided to live better in the future, he actively repaired the past. "If I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." The act of service by Jesus not only transformed Zacchaeus' future, but also healed the financial and social wounds he had inflicted on his community. 84. Service is a dance between action and contemplation. A life of service with only action and no contemplation will soon become depleted and directionless. A life with only contemplation and no action will become barren and selfish. The true servant always maintains a balance, like a graceful dance between retreating into silence to listen and stepping out into the world to love. The story of Martha and Mary is not about a contrast between 2 paths, but a lesson in balance. Jesus loved both Martha's busy service and Mary's attentive listening. His own life was a testament. He healed, he taught, action, but he also frequently withdrew to a quiet place to pray, contemplation. The most effective service comes from a heart that knows how to be still. 85. Serving is the art of new beginnings. Every day is a new opportunity to serve. Every encounter is a new opportunity to love. The servant is not bound by the past. They are experts of today, always believing in the possibility of a new beginning, both for themselves and for those they meet. When they brought the woman caught in adultery to Jesus, he gave her a new beginning with the words, "Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." "From now on" is a powerful phrase. It closes the door on the past and opens a corridor to the future. Serving is constantly opening doors of "from now on" for those imprisoned in yesterday. 86. Serving is appreciating diversity. A beautiful garden is not beautiful because it has only one type of flower, but because of the diversity and harmony of many different flowers. A serving community is the same. The servant leader does not try to make everyone like them, but appreciates the unique gifts, talents, and personalities of each individual, and helps them find their own unique way to contribute to the common good. Jesus chose 12 apostles with completely different personalities: impetuous Peter, contemplative John, doubtful Thomas, practical Matthew. He did not try to mold them into the same shape. He worked with each one, serving their development in their own way, so that their diversity became the strength of the whole group, like different instruments in an orchestra playing the same symphony. 87. Serving is being fully present. In an age of distraction, the most precious gift you can give another person is your undivided attention. When you are with someone, truly be there. Listen with your whole soul. See them as if they are the only person in the world at that moment. Full presence is a deep and rare form of service. Although crowds always surrounded him, Jesus had a miraculous ability to make the person he was talking to feel like the center of the universe. When he talked to the Samaritan woman, he gave her his full attention. When Zacchaeus was in the tree, he stopped and called him by name. He never rushed. His presence was the message. You are important. You deserve to be heard. 88. Service is a journey, not a destination. No one can say, I am done serving. The spirit of service is not a project with a start and end date. It is a way of life, a lens through which we view every aspect of our lives. There is always another person to help, another kind word to say, another forgiveness to grant. Even at the Last Supper, his final meal, Jesus was still serving. He washed the disciples' feet. He instituted the Eucharist. He gave his final teachings. Until his last breath, his life was a continuous chain of service. He taught that the path of service is the path we walk until the end of our lives. 89. Serving is recognizing that we are all beggars. The servant does not act from the position of one who has everything to give. They act from a deep awareness that they themselves are also poor, in need of the mercy, forgiveness, and love of God and others. This awareness shatters all pride and creates true solidarity. In the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector, the Pharisee prayed from a position of having, I am not like other people. The tax collector prayed from a position of not having, God have mercy on me, a sinner. Jesus said the tax collector went home justified. The true servant has the heart of the tax collector, always recognizing their own need, and it is from that poverty that they can empathize with and serve the poverty of others. 90. Service is a reflection of God. The Scriptures reveal a God who not only sits on a throne of power, but is also a God who stoops down, a God who seeks, a God who serves. Every time a person serves another with selfless love, they are becoming a mirror reflecting the image of a serving God and making his love visible on earth. St. Paul, in his letter to the Philippians, summarized the entire life of Jesus in a hymn of service. Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. The entire work of salvation is described as a voluntary act of humbling oneself to serve. Therefore, when we serve, we are participating in the very core act of God's love. 91. Service is an act of gratitude. We do not serve to repay God or to accumulate merit. We serve because our hearts are overflowing with gratitude for what we ourselves have received: life, love, forgiveness. The act of service becomes a wordless song of thanks, a joy in sharing the gift we have received. Of the 10 lepers healed by Jesus, only one, a Samaritan, returned. He did not just say, "Thank you." The Gospel records that he praised God in a loud voice and threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. Jesus asked, "Where are the other 9?" Then said to him, "Rise and go, your faith has made you well." His return, that act of gratitude, was itself a service to the truth, testifying to God's goodness and completing the circle of grace. 92. Serving is the art of small things. The world often honors great works, heroic gestures. But the kingdom of heaven is built on the foundation of countless small, anonymous acts of love that no one notices. A kind word, a comforting pat, a silent help. These are the atoms that make up the universe of compassion. When Jesus was sitting in the temple, he was not paying attention to the rich people putting large sums into the treasury. His gaze fell on a poor widow who put in only 2 small coins. He told his disciples that she had put in more than anyone else. A disciple later asked him privately, "Master, why are 2 small coins more important than the entire treasury of the rich?" Jesus replied, "Because the kingdom of heaven is not built with gold and silver, but with hearts. A small act done with great love is more precious than a great work built with pride." 93. Serving is daring to waste time on others. In a world obsessed with efficiency, spending time to sit down, listen to a long-winded story, or simply be silently present with someone who is sad without a specific purpose or outcome can be seen as a waste. But for the servant, that is the most precious time, an investment in a soul. The disciples often tried to protect Jesus' time from people they considered unimportant. When people brought children to him, they rebuked them. But Jesus was indignant and said, "Let the little children come to me." He took them in his arms and placed his hands on them. In terms of work, that time produced no results. No sermon was given, no miracle was performed. But in terms of love, it was a priceless act of service, teaching that people are more important than the agenda. 94. Serving is bearing one another's burdens. Serving is not always a joyful celebration. Sometimes it is quietly entering into the pain of another, sharing the burden of their despair, their sadness, their sin. It is heavy work, requiring strong spiritual shoulders and a heart wide enough. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus experienced extreme agony. He said to his closest disciples, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." He did not hide his burden. By inviting them to keep watch with me, he gave them an opportunity to practice the deepest form of service, not doing something, but sharing the burden together in the dark night of the soul. 95. Serving with the imagination of hope. The servant does not just solve today's problems. They are also those who sow in the hearts of others an imagination for a better tomorrow. They help people envision a world where forgiveness is stronger than revenge, cooperation is stronger than competition, and love is stronger than fear. The Sermon on the Mount is not just a set of laws, it is a manifesto of the imagination. When Jesus said, "Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth," or "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God," he was painting a picture of a whole new world order. He was serving humanity by giving them a vision, a dream worth living for and striving for. 96. Serving is having the humility to be served. A person who only knows how to give and never allows others to serve them is actually still imprisoned in the subtle pride of a benefactor. The true servant understands that community is a circle. They must have the humility to sometimes be the weak one, the one in need of help, allowing others to experience the joy of giving. When Jesus began to wash the disciples' feet, Peter vehemently objected, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet? No, you shall never wash my feet." Jesus replied, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." The lesson here is not just about Jesus serving, but also about Peter having to learn how to receive service. By allowing others to serve us, we are acknowledging their dignity and kindness. 97. Serving is crossing tribal boundaries. The human instinct is to care for those in our family, our tribe, our nation. The spirit of service in Jesus is radically universal. It breaks down all walls of us and them, and declares that anyone in need of mercy is our neighbor. The parable of the Good Samaritan was Jesus' answer to the question, "Who is my neighbor?" The priest and the Levite, who were of the same religious tribe, passed by. Only the Samaritan, who was considered a foreigner and an enemy, stopped. Jesus turned all prejudices upside down. He taught that the servant's question is not, "Does this person belong to my group?" but, "Does this person need me?" 98. Serving is an act that challenges cynicism. The world is full of reasons to be cynical and bitter. Every day, we see injustice, selfishness, and violence. In this context, every act of service, however small, is an act of faith, a powerful challenge against despair. It is a declaration that love still has the final say. One afternoon, when the disciples returned and told Jesus about the injustices they saw in the marketplace, Thomas said dejectedly, "This world is so dark, Master. Kindness is like a drop of water in a desert." Jesus was silent for a moment, then pointed to a mother patiently comforting her crying child. He said, "Thomas, don't look at the desert. Look at the drop of water. For it is in that drop of water that life begins. Every time you choose kindness over indifference, you are making the desert recede." 99. Serving is caring for our common home. The servant's love is not limited to human beings. It extends to the entire creation of God. Serving also means being a good steward, caring for the land, the rivers, the trees, and the animals, because all are part of the gift of life given to us. Jesus often used images from nature to teach. He spoke of the lilies of the field that do not labor or spin, yet are more beautiful than King Solomon, of the sparrows cared for by the Father. One day, passing a dry vineyard, he said to his disciples, "The vine dresser serves God not only with prayers, but by caring for each vine, so that the land may offer its best fruits to the Father." To love people without loving the earth that sustains them is an incomplete love. 100. Service is an unfinished symphony. No single servant can complete all the work. Each life of service is like writing a few notes in a great symphony. The humble servant accepts their role, plays their part as faithfully and beautifully as they can, and then entrusts future generations to write the following movements. King David longed to build the temple for God, but God said it would be his son, Solomon, who would complete the work. David was not sad. He joyfully prepared all the materials for his son. Jesus did the same. He began the work of proclaiming the kingdom, but he entrusted it to his disciples and the church to continue. He said, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these." Serving is knowing your place in the larger story. 101. Service is ultimately tested by love in the face of betrayal. The final measure of a servant's heart is not how they treat their friends, but how they react to their betrayer. When one can love, care for, and serve even the person who has and will cause them the most pain, that is when service has reached a divine level, reflecting a love no longer based on worthiness, but only on its own nature. At the Last Supper, Jesus knew full well that Judas was about to betray him. But what did he do? He still washed his feet. And then the Gospel of John records a heart-wrenching detail. Jesus took a piece of bread, dipped it in the dish, and gave it to Judas. In Jewish culture, for the host to dip and give the first piece of food to a guest was a gesture of honor, of friendship, and of utmost intimacy. In the very moment he knew he was about to be betrayed, Jesus responded with an act of loving and intimate service. That is the final and most profound lesson. Dear friends of the Church Audio channel, so our journey, with 101 reflections on Jesus' philosophy of becoming great by being a servant, has come to an end. We have traveled a long road together, discovering gems of wisdom not just for the mind, but for the heart and life of each person. 101 philosophies, in the end, are not a list to be memorized, but 101 paths leading to the same single destination: love. A love that knows how to stoop, a love that knows how to act, a love that finds greatness in the smallest things. And now, as this video ends, the real journey for each of us begins. That journey is not far away, but right in your own home, at your workplace, on the streets you walk every day. You don't need to do anything great. The invitation today is simple. Start with one small act of service. Maybe it's a kind word to your spouse after a long day of work. Maybe it's a listening ear for a colleague who is struggling. Maybe it's a silent help for a stranger on the street. Or simply a sincere prayer for someone who has hurt you. It is these small acts done with great love that will be the bricks that build the kingdom of heaven right here on earth and turn our lives into a song of service that is pleasing to God. We would love to hear your story. What small act of service has touched your heart, or have you performed for someone else this week? Please share your stories and reflections in the comments below, so we can build a community of love and spread the light together. If these reflections have brought value to you, please help Church Audio spread this message to more people by hitting the like button and sharing this video with your friends and family. And if you are not yet a member of our family, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss our next meaningful spiritual journeys. Once again, from the Church Audio channel, thank you sincerely for your companionship throughout this video series. We wish you and your families abundant peace, joy, and a heart ready to serve. Goodbye, and see you in the next programs. 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 See you in the next programs.